The story begins. In a big company, people are spreading rumors about a certain couple dating. However, the male lead Masagu, he has absolutely nothing to do with that. When Masagu is in the office, two coworkers keep gossiping non-stop about something. They keep talking about couples who are dating inside the company. But Masagu just sees it as something normal. Right at that moment, Matsuo Yui, a strict girl in the company, walks over and scolds Masagu loudly because his handwriting is too terrible, causing the company's receipt to be rejected. But Masagu can only stand still and take the blame. While everyone thinks Yui is difficult to deal with, they don't know that she is actually Masugu's girlfriend, because the two of them only started dating a few days ago. And they are trying their best to keep it a secret from everyone at work. When they return home, Yui immediately apologizes to her boyfriend because she scolded him too harshly that morning. Masagu wants her to change her attitude toward him at work, but Yui firmly refuses. She wants to continue acting like a strict coworker to avoid suspicion. Yui even sets several strict rules when walking through the hallway. They must pretend not to know each other at all. Outside the company, they must wear masks to avoid being recognized. At this point, although it's a bit difficult, Masagu still happily accepts because he cherishes this new relationship and doesn't want his girlfriend to get into trouble. The real reason Yui wants to keep everything secret is because she worries their relationship might affect work, and especially in this company, people tend to gossip a lot. Masagu also wants to protect her from unnecessary rumors, so he follows all her rules without complaint. A few days later, Masugu's workload increases, leaving him no time to rest. Meanwhile, Yui works in the planning department, so she has more free time. She tries to find a chance to bring documents to the accounting department to meet him. But her coworker misunderstands and thinks she's upset, so they take over instead. Throughout the week, both are overwhelmed with work, so they barely have any chance to meet. One morning, Masagu takes the elevator with his boss to submit a report. Coincidentally, Yui also needs to use the elevator, and so, the two run into each other. Even though she's happy to see her boyfriend, Yui keeps a cold face so no one suspects anything. A female coworker praises Yui for her excellent work, and Yui accidentally drags Masagu into the conversation, making him even more flustered. Masagu tries to joke a little, but when he notices Yui's ears turning red, he immediately goes silent to avoid revealing their relationship. After a busy period at work, Masagu and Yui decide to go on a date. He invites her to watch a movie, and for the first time, they ask to call each other by name. Instead of addressing each other formally like at work, they finally speak casually. On the date, Masagu wears a stylish suit, and Yui has a new hairstyle that makes his face turn red because she is just too cute. Yui becomes so embarrassed she can't say his name, causing Masagu to tease her non-stop. After flirting for a while, they enter the cinema, but during the movie's climax, Yui gets scared, and she instinctively grabs Masugu's hand. He's nervous too but tries to stay calm. When the movie ends, the two go looking for a place to eat. Suddenly they run into an upperclassman who used to guide Yui in university, and also happens to know Masagu from the company. He happily chats with them and even invites them to eat together. While talking, he casually mentions that he planned to watch a movie but arrived late. Hearing that, Yui panics and signals Masuga that they must hide the fact they watched the movie together. So Masagu lies, saying, "I just went to the movie alone." After the meal, the upperclassman says goodbye and leaves. Yui finally gathers the courage to call Masagu by his name, even though her face is still red with embarrassment. Masagu keeps teasing her because she said the upperclassman's name so naturally, but becomes shy when saying her boyfriend's name. They go home and spend a wonderful evening together. The next morning, they head to work. Masagu worries Yui might get caught wearing the same outfit as yesterday, but she already prepared spare clothes at the company, so no one suspects anything. On the train, Masagu unexpectedly meets Mori, a junior from accounting, making him panic, almost exposing their relationship. But when he sees Yui boarding safely without being recognized, he finally sighs in relief. Masagu still can't believe, "I'm living in a secret romance with the girl I've liked for so long." And this secret relationship makes his office life more exciting than ever. After winning Yui over, the strict coworker he had liked for a long time, Masagu feels like his life has entered a new chapter. However, the two decide to keep their relationship a secret because they don't want to affect their work. Every time they accidentally cross paths in the company, the two of them act distant. Their jobs are always busy, leaving them no chance to talk much. If they act too close, coworkers might get suspicious, so Yui has no choice but to play the role of the strict coworker. She often snaps at Masagu whenever she sees him. Currently, Yui is participating in a product development contest, which makes her increasingly exhausted. She is torn between two cake prototypes, A and B, so a coworker suggests bringing them to the accounting department to let someone taste test. At that moment, Masagu is helping clean up in the accounting office. When he sees Yui show up, Masagu thinks to himself, she must be here to see me. Unexpectedly, she only wants to ask Mori, a coworker nicknamed the Dessert Destroyer, to try the samples. Mori quickly tastes both cakes and gives Yui straightforward feedback, so she chooses the cake with the washed batter texture. Then Mori even gives her more suggestions for improvement, surprising Yui. It turns out Mori is actually a famous food reviewer online, but Mori asks her to keep it a secret because she doesn't want anyone in real life to know. Through their conversation, Yui realizes Mori is actually very kind. On the other hand, Mori is also surprised to see Yui so friendly, completely different from the scary image she had heard about. She thinks, so Yui only acts grumpy toward Masagu. The two then chat about Masagu. Mori lists all of his bad habits, being picky, overly meticulous, and nagging about every detail. Hearing that, Yui can only nod because she experiences those things every day. Mori also mentions that recently Masagu often looks at his phone and smiles to himself, making Yui blush because she knows he's texting her. As for Mori, even though Masagu is weird, he's still a kind coworker. That reminds Yui of their sweet moments together, making her blush again. That evening, they meet at Masugu's place. He curiously asks about her encounter with Mori, but Yui refuses to tell him, because she heard from Mori about how hard Masagu has been working. Yui decides to give him a massage to apologize for the morning incident. She uses the excuse that they haven't been close lately, so she gently massages him to feel his body again, while pretending it's simply because they haven't touched each other for a while. A few days later, Yui brings the newly improved cake samples for everyone to try, and she also teaches Sumi, the new coworker in her department. Meanwhile, Masagu gets scolded by his boss because of his report, making him extremely irritated. At that moment, Yui walks by, and a few coworkers immediately tease the two of them. Masagu panics, afraid their relationship might be exposed, so he pretends to act strict and criticizes Yui's cake as lacking quality, shocking everyone because they didn't expect him to say such a thing. But no one knows it's just part of their act. While fixing his report, Masagu recalls Yui's hardworking attitude, giving him motivation to keep going. At that moment, he and Mori get invited to drink with the department head because they've been working too hard recently. Meanwhile, Yui's planning team is also holding a celebration party after the contest. Coincidentally, the two parties are held near each other, forcing both of them to drink, yet they still try to keep the secret. At the party, Sumi gradually fits in thanks to Yui's friendliness. Everyone keeps praising Yui, making Masagu feel so proud he could float into the sky. However, Yui drinks too much, forcing her to rush to the restroom. Seeing that, Masagu becomes worried and runs after her. He finds her barely able to stand. Masagu could only rub her back and reassure her. Suddenly, Yui unconsciously held onto his arm. Right at that moment, Sumi walked out of the restroom. Sumi accidentally overheard the conversation, and he immediately guessed that they were secretly dating. The next day, the two discussed how to deal with the fact that Sumi already knew their secret. At this moment, Yui was worried. She feared Sumi might accidentally reveal it and cause rumors to spread in the company. So Masagu reassured her. Sumi isn't the type who likes to gossip. Masagu understood that Yui was afraid it would affect her work. That made him feel even more protective toward her. After that, Masagu took the initiative to meet Sumi and explain things clearly. Sumi admitted he had no intention of spreading any rumors. But Masagu was puzzled. He asked why they didn't go public when the company didn't forbid relationships. Masagu explained that he wanted to draw a line between love and work. Because Yui was extremely serious about her job, he didn't want their relationship to cause others to judge her. Sumi respected that reason, and he promised to keep the secret. Hearing Some's words made Masagu think more about the future. He started imagining a family, a wedding and children. That made him even more determined to work harder so he could stay by Yui's side long term. Today, the boss assigned Yui's team the task of designing a pastry in a traditional style. However, Yui believed they needed to change towards something cuter and fresher. She emphasized that if the company kept sticking to the same old style, it would be very easy for competitors to surpass them. Everyone could see Yui's fiery determination. Even boss Mita didn't expect her to devote herself to the company that much. At that moment, no one knew how to respond. Suddenly, the boss turned to ask Sumi. He was sitting right beside them. Sumi thought, We should go with a simple and traditional approach, it would fit better. Yui heard Some's opinion, which made her feel a bit awkward, because she remembered when Some once caught her being lovey-dovey with her boyfriend. That made Yui reconsider things more carefully. Meanwhile, Boss Mita sighed deeply. He held his forehead, not knowing how to handle the situation. That night, Masagu came home later than usual, because he wanted to buy premium donuts for his beloved wife. While pouring extra milk over the donut, Yui hummed a tune as she worked, making Masagu feel that his wife was truly adorable. Not only was Yui cute, even the objects in the house had a round and cute style. For example, the plushy rabbits, she named them USA-chan. They were completely the opposite of Masugu's simple room. After finishing the preparations, the two ate the donuts together. Watching Yui happily choose her donut, Masagu worried, wondering what he had to Neto make her bring her work personality home with her. Yui picked a donut and took a delighted bite. Meanwhile, Masagu quietly enjoyed the sight of his wife eating adorably to the point of melting his heart. Since her first days at the company, Yui had always liked sweets and often sampled them according to coworkers' tastes. Now she even looked for recommendations on social media, making her love even more types of pastries. Masagu, on the other hand, didn't like sweets. He only bought them for Yui because she liked them. But thanks to watching Yui enjoy donuts every night, he gradually became more curious about different kinds of donuts. Masagu offered Yui the donut he was eating, hoping for an indirect kiss. But Yui preferred a direct kiss instead. She looked at her husband's cute expression, so the two showed their love in front of some unfortunate single people out there. Yui made a shy face and ran off to make coffee. This was the first time Masagu had ever seen that expression from Yui, which made him like her even more and grow even more curious about her. That night, Yui told her husband about working with Sumi at the company. Masagu told her to feel free to work as she liked because Sumi was a good person. However, the sentence, "Who knows if you two will even get married?" from the other day, that sentence made Yui remember and feel a bit hurt. The next morning, Yui couldn't concentrate because she had to work with Sumi again. The more she thought about it, the more confused she became, especially when she remembered Masugu's flushed face from last night without knowing why. Right at that moment, a coworker handed Yui a sample donut packaging. That image reminded her of eating donuts the previous night with her boyfriend. She panicked, afraid the secret might be exposed. So Yui quickly said, "That person is a female friend, and we didn't do anything inappropriate." She was basically confessing before being questioned, making Sumi freeze awkwardly. He had promised to keep the secret, yet Yui still feared he might reveal their relationship, so she was incredibly flustered. After the other employees left as ordered by Boss Mita, only Yui and Sumi remained in the room. The two finished the documents together. Yui intended to subtly ask whether Sumi planned to reveal the secret or not. But Sumi immediately said, "Do you think I'm that untrustworthy?" realizing her behavior was a bit excessive. Yui patted her cheeks to regain composure and explained. She said this was her first time dating in secret, so she was nervous and a little happy. As her senior, Sumi advised that if Yui kept showing expressions like that, she would be exposed even faster. Meanwhile, in the accounting department, Shizuno asked Masagu to go to the storage room to get some documents. He found them in just a few minutes, but as he was about to leave, he heard a noise in the next storage room. It turned out Yui had just fallen. Since they were at work, the two had to act distant, but it still felt awkward. When they realized no one was around, they took the chance to be a little clingy. Masagu helped Yui pick up her things, while Yui kept switching to company mode, making Masagu frustrated because they were in an empty room. When placing items on a high shelf, Masagu held the ladder for Yui. He accidentally saw a dangerous angle from below. He felt relieved that he was the one holding the ladder and not someone else. Feeling too anxious, he asked to switch places with Yui. She refused, but Masagu explained, "The skirt you're wearing is quite short." Yui panicked, lost her balance, and fell straight into Masugu's arms. It was an incredibly romantic moment. Right when they were about to enjoy their love, two of Yui's co-workers suddenly walked in. Masagu quickly pulled Yui to hide behind a large curtain. If they accidentally hit the wooden board next to them, everything would be exposed. Masugu's heartbeat shot up to 350 out of fear. Yui reassured him, saying it was fine to hold her tightly. When the co-workers finally left, the two could finally breathe in relief. A few days later, Shizuno called Masagu and Mori in to announce something important. Masagu thought she was inviting them for drinks again, but she pulled out a stack of premium baseball tickets. Since she used to drink with the planning department, she invited them along. What made Masagu happiest was getting to watch baseball with Yui. Even though he wanted to show his excitement, he had to keep his composure because they were still at work. While watching the game, Yui asked about the number 312 on the scoreboard. Masagu explained it was the batter's hitting average. Right as he finished explaining, that batter scored. Masagu got overly excited and accidentally celebrated with Yui, forgetting to keep distance. Luckily, everyone else was too focused on the game. During the break, the two went to buy snacks. Yui said, "Even though I don't understand baseball much, I'm really happy to watch it with you." She was also surprised because it was her first time seeing him that excited. Amid the crowd, Masagu seized the chance to hold his wife's hand, making Yui think he was drunk. A sudden kiss from a couple on the big screen made Masagu even more excited. So he hugged Yui right in the middle of the walkway. Right then, Shizuno passed by. Luckily, she was a bit clueless and didn't notice anything. After the game ended, seeing how happy Masagu was like a child, Yui whispered, "Let's come watch again next time." Masagu could only smile happily after hearing that. Finally, the product Yui had poured her heart into was officially displayed at the company's store. Today, she decided to visit to see whether it was selling well or not. After waiting for a long time, a customer finally approached, but the person only looked and walked away without buying anything. This left Yui extremely disappointed. At the company, Shizuno was quite popular and often approached by coworkers for small talk. She didn't hate socializing, but sometimes she just wanted to be alone to think. That day, Sumi happened to stop by a cafe and saw Shizuno bowing awkwardly while greeting people. Since the cafe was full, the staff arranged for Sumi to sit at the same table as her. Having her secret private spot discovered by Sumi and being forced to share a table made Shizuno extremely uncomfortable. To make matters worse, they ordered the exact same dish at the same time, which made her even more frustrated. Logically, the one who should have felt awkward was Sumi, since he was eating breakfast with his senior. But he remained calm and unreasonably handsome. Meanwhile, at work, Yui tried searching online for people mentioning her product but found nothing. The lack of feedback made her even more upset. Seeing her exhausted expression, Masagu approached to ask what was wrong, but Yui ignored him because her mind was too overwhelmed. Back to the morning at the cafe. Shizuno and Some's meals coincidentally arrived in the same style. Embarrassed, Shizuno told Sumi to just eat comfortably, even though she was the one feeling awkward. Being used to polite small talk, her words came out automatically. Sumi calmly replied that her food was getting cold. Both of them were the type who preferred sitting alone in cafes. And this became yet another similarity. Sumi told Shizuno she didn't need to pay attention to him, because sharing a table didn't mean they had to talk. In the end, they each sank into their own worlds. What surprised Shizuno was that Sumi was the only colleague who didn't make her feel trapped in meaningless small talk. Before leaving the cafe, Sumi was surprised to learn that Shizuno often worked before office hours. Until now, he always thought she was just a drinking buddy. Shizuno froze for a moment at his farewell, but then a soft smile appeared on her face. At the office, Yui felt miserable because her product got no social media engagement at all. Meanwhile, her coworker's product was selling extremely well. She planned to ask for more budget for promotion, but before she could speak, the boss dumped a pile of new documents on her to handle immediately. Yui wanted to focus on developing her product, so she worked in frustration. Coworkers kept bothering her, and she couldn't hold it in, slamming the table, then frantically apologizing. That night, when she got home, Yui walked in with a heavy expression, worrying Masagu. After a few drinks, she vented all her frustration, cursing her boss for giving her too much work and saying she had no standout qualities. Yui explained that while she was trying to think of ways to promote her product, her coworkers only praised the previous product. That made her feel belittled. Masagu, working in accounting, didn't know much about production, but he knew situations like this were common. Anyone would feel upset if their passion project was ignored. He said he had also been scolded by his boss over budget issues. But in the end, things weren't as bad as he thought. Those sincere words helped Yui calm down. The next morning, Yui was moved when she saw two schoolgirls as the first customers buying her pastry. That moment made her realize, disappointment and joy are both the results of effort. And what truly matters is to keep moving forward. During lunch, two coworkers, Yu-chan and Yukiko, came over to chat. Yui happened to overhear the accounting team praising Masagu non-stop, which made her feel quite pleased. But right after that, they began discussing his personal life and even said that Masagu already had a girlfriend, which immediately made Yui anxious. She suddenly realized that Masagu wasn't just kind but also very handsome. So it was natural for others to be interested in him. Yu-chan and Yukiko also understood how Yui felt. especially since she had been looking a bit sloppy compared to the cute girls in the accounting department lately. That motivated her to take better care of herself. Yui's sudden change caught Masugu's attention even though they weren't meeting that day. In fact, Yui had just bought a new set of lingerie and wanted to test it out with Masugu. But he refused because he felt she was overthinking things. When Yui confessed that she was afraid Masugu might have a whole harem around him, he simply laughed and assured her that no matter how many people admired him, he only had eyes for her. Hearing that, Yui got so annoyed that she decided to deal with him that night. Masugu panicked and tried to escape by going to take a shower. But Yui absolutely refused to let him get away. And then, the thing everyone could predict happened. The next morning, Yui walked into the company with a tired face after a very exhausting night. As soon as she got into the elevator, she ran into 3 coworkers who always gossiped about Masugu. She tried to act normal when they praised him. But right after that, Masugu showed up, making her change her attitude instantly. Seeing those girls flirt with her boyfriend while she couldn't react, Yui could only remind herself to clearly separate work from private life. After all, the things that made Masugu special when he was with her were things only she knew. Even more surprising, Masugu himself said that he had a girlfriend. Yu-chan wasn't too shocked. But she had no idea that the girlfriend they were talking about was actually Yui, the coworker standing beside them every day. Lately, the company had been less busy because summer vacation would start tomorrow. Everyone had their own plans. Morizano planned to travel to Nagoya, stopping at different train stations with a free travel pass. On the other hand, Shizuno would still go to work as usual, because even if she had days off, she didn't know where to go anyway. As for Yui and Masugu, the two still hadn't agreed on a destination. Masugu wanted to go to Hokkaido, while Yui insisted on Okinawa. They argued for a while but still couldn't choose, so they quietly went home. In truth, their personalities didn't match at all. Before dating, they argued every single day, to the point where everyone called them the quarrelsome couple. After getting home, they continued sitting together to rethink their plans. Masugu laughed and said that when you look back at how nothing works out, this doesn't work. That doesn't work, it's actually kind of fun. He worried that going to Okinawa for 3 days and 2 nights during this season meant they might run into a typhoon. But he boldly declared that he was the weather's favorite child. So there was nothing to be afraid of. He said that, but Yui was still extremely worried. If they couldn't go to Okinawa, Yui would be really disappointed, because she already had a whole list in her head of things she wanted to do there. Meanwhile, Masugu wanted to go to Hokkaido to drink and enjoy outdoor hot springs. But according to Yui, hot springs are everywhere, so there's no need to go all the way to Hokkaido. Hearing that, Masugu lost interest too and said that anywhere with hot springs was fine. So Yui teased him, saying his personality was just like an old man. After a long argument, Masugu decided to follow the boss of the house. But that answer only made Yui even more irritated. She felt that if he just agreed for the sake of agreeing, then it meant he didn't really have any place he truly wanted to go with her. Even though earlier he said he wanted to visit an outdoor hot spring. Yes, girls are very easy to understand. In the end, Masugu had to say it straight. He wanted to go to a hot spring with her. Hearing that, Yui immediately made him practice by inviting him to bathe together in their home bathtub. But the bathtub at home was too small, so the two decided to book a room at a hot spring inn in Yamanashi for their summer vacation. Back to the present, at the company, Masugu told Morizano and Shizuno that he would be going to Yamanashi during the break, making them mistakenly think it was his hometown. In the planning department, Yui had finished her work, and she should have been preparing her luggage for the trip tomorrow. But something unexpected happened. While Masugu was packing his things, he suddenly received a message from Yui. It turned out the company's shipment still hadn't been sent to the sales location, causing chaos in the entire planning department. Using the products in the warehouse would be the fastest, but the paperwork was complicated and couldn't be processed right away. Hearing the news felt like lightning striking Yui. She had been looking forward to this trip for a whole month, and now it was at risk of being ruined. The planning department only had 3 people left, so the manager ordered all 3 to work overtime until everything was done. It was already 8 in the evening, yet Yui still had to sit there packing goods like someone in the manufacturing line. Meanwhile, Masugu called her non-stop, but she was too busy to answer. After several hours of stressful work, even the manager started feeling discouraged. At this pace, they might not finish even by tomorrow. Yukiko realized that Yui had summer vacation plans, but she still wanted to ask Yui to stay and help more. Yui thought about it a lot. If she told Masugu she had work, he would definitely understand. But this was the first trip they had been excited about together. So she didn't want to give up so easily. Just when things seemed hopeless, Yu Chan suddenly brought the entire planning team over to help. Thanks to the additional manpower, they managed to finish packing before midnight. The manager was deeply moved by everyone's teamwork. After a long, exhausting day, Yui could finally relax and prepare for her trip with the man she loved. Because Yui didn't reply even though Masagu kept messaging her, he grew worried and went outside to look for her. He found Yui on the street, still exhausted after working overtime. He let out a relieved sigh. Glad she was safe, Yui quickly apologized for not answering the phone. Under the streetlights, the two promised each other that tomorrow would definitely be a wonderful trip. The next morning, at their usual cafe, Shizuno was working when she happened to run into Somei again. Because it was summer, everywhere was crowded, so Somei decided to postpone all his travel plans until autumn for comfort. They hadn't planned to meet, but to Shizuno, Somei had already become a familiar part of her morning routine. Meanwhile, the lovebirds Yui and Masagu were enjoying their happy trip in Yamanashi. It was also Masugu's hometown, so Yui found it a bit strange that he agreed to travel in his own hometown. But for Masagu, as long as he was with Yui, he was happy. The two were holding hands and being lovey-dovey when a child suddenly caught them, making Masagu blush as red as a tomato. Yui just laughed, saying that since they were lovers, a bit of affection wasn't strange at all. Right at that moment, a female reporter appeared wanting to interview a couple traveling together. Masagu got flustered but also a bit excited since it was his first time being interviewed. Seeing that Yui was too shy in front of the camera, the reporter suggested only filming the two of them eating pastries. But Yui still refused, because she was terrified that a coworker might accidentally see them on TV. After walking a bit more, the two arrived at a sunflower field. Just moments ago Yui was still shy, yet here she was smiling as bright as the flowers. Masagu didn't forget to tease her, saying the sunflowers were beautiful, but not as beautiful as she was. And so the two continued flirting affectionately, torturing all the single viewers watching from behind their screens. That evening, they stayed at a hot spring hotel. Since they would head to Nagano the next day, Yui wasn't sure if she could even wake up. Gazing at the bright moon, Masagu suddenly remembered the time they were interns together. Everyone had gotten drunk that day, leaving only Yui and Masagu sober enough to clean up the battlefield. He never expected that one day he would be drinking alone with her. The atmosphere that night made him realize he already liked her back then. Lost in their emotions, the two spelled each other's names again until morning. Yui still wasn't satisfied and planned to drain Masagu dry, but luckily the inn staff delivered breakfast, saving him just in time. In the following days, the two visited a dairy farm, went shopping, and took a cruise on a large lake. When sunset fell, Yui wanted to buy souvenirs for her coworkers. She picked some grape clusters, accidentally making Masagu guilty because his family also owned a vineyard. Yet he hadn't stopped by to help at all. Even though he didn't go home to help, he still proudly insisted that the grapes from his family's farm were definitely better. Enjoying the peaceful countryside scenery, Yui suddenly felt more mature. Someday, she wanted to visit Masugu's vineyard too. The next morning, the inn owner learned her lesson and didn't bring breakfast too early this time. So the two happily stayed in bed until 9 in the morning. Yesterday Yui was the one taking the lead, and today it was Masugu's turn. After waking up, the two went to enjoy the outdoor hot spring again. Yui decided that after this trip, she would dive straight into her next project. Seeing how hard Yui kept working, Masagu wanted to push himself too. He set the goal of getting the level 1 certification, while Yui continued aiming for her work objectives. They promised each other, if next year someone fails their goal, that person will have to pay for the hotel on their next trip. After the vacation, Morizano brought specialty pastries from her trip to share with the accounting department. She even stopped by the planning department to give Yui a portion, which made Masagu nervous because earlier he told everyone he went somewhere else. Just as he feared, Yui also gave Morizano a bunch of souvenirs from Yamanashi and even shared detailed stories about their time there. Hearing that made Masagu blush, since he was the one who planned the entire itinerary. Thankfully, Morizano and Shizuno weren't gossip types, so they simply thought it was an amusing coincidence. Summer vacation had ended, everyone had their own memories, and it was time to return to work. Yui's next project was a Sakura-flavored cookie, which her boss rated higher than her previous product. This time, she no longer felt jealous of her coworkers like before, because she had grown and realized that taking things one step at a time was enough. In a meeting with the sales department, Yui and manager Mita had to work with Hiromi, the head of sales. Hiromi looked friendly, But the moment he reviewed the documents, he made snide remarks about the planning team being too long-winded. Mita tried to protect his department's reputation, but the more he spoke, the worse it got, and every argument he made was shut down by Hiromi. When Mita stepped out to take a phone call, Hiromi suddenly told Yui that his sales department was short-handed and invited her to transfer over. Yui immediately refused because she felt she hadn't done enough in the planning team. She had only just begun making steady progress. But Hiromi even knew about Yui's failed previous product and said he was impressed by it, which made Yui waver. He added that if she wanted her future projects to be approved quickly, only the sales department could make that happen. His words hit Yui right where her doubts were, making her think deeply. That evening, Yui and Masagu visited a newly opened mall managed by the sales department. The place was a paradise for office workers to treat themselves after work, so it was always packed. Yui told Masagu about Hiromi's offer. Masagu was happy for her, but Yui herself wasn't ready. Hiromi's words made her feel as though the path she believed in was starting to shake. She knew switching to a new environment was a big opportunity, but her longtime goal had always been the planning team. She didn't want to leave her coworkers nor abandon the goal-setting challenge she made with Masagu. Seeing Yui ramble from stress, Masagu gently pinched her cheek to calm her down. He told her that this was a turning point in her life, so only she could decide what she truly wanted, not because of someone else's expectations. The next day in the meeting, Yui's mind was completely tangled, even though she had worked in planning for 6 years. Right at that moment, she got a call from the production team about the new product. Her junior had been allowed to participate directly, while Yui's previous plan still needed revisions. She realized the path she chose came with many difficulties, whereas if she transferred to sales, she could avoid most of the hard parts. The next morning, as soon as Yui entered the office, she received an email from Hiromi full of extremely useful documents. But right after that, she got shocking news. Her new product had been ordered to halt by production because she had been so distracted by the job transfer issue. Yui had made several important mistakes, causing Mita to scold her harshly. Her coworkers, including Some, encouraged Yui since it was her first time ever making such a mistake. Yui herself was stunned that she had grown complacent just because someone talented like Hiromi had shown interest in recruiting her, causing everything she worked on to fall apart. That evening, Yui went to Masugu's place to de-stress by draining him intensely. After her mood settled down, she finally told him everything about the job offer. Masagu simply held Yui in his arms and said that no matter what path she chose, he believed it would be the right one for her. Just being with him was enough to stabilize her feelings. It was already late at night, and although Masagu wanted Yui to stay over, she still had work to finish, so she had to return home. He didn't have experience changing workplaces, but he understood this was something only Yui could decide, and if she faced any hardship, he would always welcome her at his place anytime. The next morning, Yui happened to run into Hiromi again, and he asked her about the job transfer, leaving her flustered when he noticed that her project proposal hadn't been submitted for the competition yet. Hiromi advised her to turn it in immediately if she truly had an idea. If she didn't dare to submit it, it meant she was still afraid of failure. Those words ignited Yui's fighting spirit. She rushed into the office and asked her boss for permission to add her proposal to the review list. Even though the meeting hadn't started yet, her boss worried that Yui's previous proposal still unfinished might affect other teams. But Yui promised she could handle it. She wanted to challenge herself with her own project, even if it meant she might seem selfish. In the end, her boss agreed to let her try. Yu Chan praised her for being so cool, saying that sometimes being a little selfish was good. The next day, Yui met Hiromi privately to officially decline his invitation to transfer departments. She said she still wanted to make sweets with the planning team and didn't want to abandon the goals she set with her coworkers. But she also hoped Hiromi would allow her to attend the sales department's training sessions. Yui knew it was a bold request, but if she didn't speak up, she would never get anywhere. Unexpectedly, Hiromi agreed immediately. He had no obligation to help someone from another department, but jokingly said, "If I can recruit Yui someday, then investing a little is worth it." Yui felt anxious but also happy because she had finally spoken her true decision. Until now, Masagu had never cared about anniversaries and had never given anyone a serious present. But this time, he wanted to use their half-year anniversary to give Yui something meaningful. Just imagining Yui receiving the gift made him grin non-stop, causing coworker Mori to stare in confusion. He even asked everyone what he should buy, then immediately answered his own questions, looking exactly like a fool in love. Observing Yui's habits, Masagu realized she rarely wore accessories. so he decided to give her a piece of jewelry that would make her look extra special when she wore it. While Yui went to the restroom, Masagu secretly searched online for suitable designs. When Yui returned and thanked him for letting her use the restroom, his heart nearly burst just from that tiny comment. Yui also invited him to a sweets festival on Saturday, but Masagu made up an excuse, wanting to keep his surprise plan a secret. The next day, he went to a large jewelry mall to find the perfect gift. The sales clerk immediately read him as a young man preparing for an anniversary surprise. She even suggested couple rings, which flustered Masagu because 6 months felt a bit too fast. But when he heard they offered free name engraving, he decided to go big. The only problem was that he didn't know Yui's ring size, so he didn't buy anything yet. While hanging out with Yu-chan, Yui accidentally spotted Masagu wandering around suspiciously on the street, making her feel everything was getting weirder and weirder. The next evening, Masagu took Yui to a fancy restaurant to celebrate their 6-month anniversary. He gave her a ring, leaving Yui so touched she couldn't speak, but just as they were about to kiss, the dream ended. Because that was all in Masugu's imagination. To prepare for the real event, he sneaked into Yui's apartment to figure out her ring size. His plan was to wait until she fell asleep and secretly measure her hand. But his suspicious behavior made Yui think he was mentally fried from studying too hard. She had no idea he was just trying to get her ring size. Yui, though a little suspicious, still let him do it. When she pretended to sleep, Masagu got excited after successfully completing his mission, not realizing Yui was only faking it. The next morning, Masagu worked with full enthusiasm just from imagining the moment he would give Yui her gift. Meanwhile, Yui grew increasingly worried because Masagu was acting strange, rejecting dates. Glued to his phone while smiling to himself, and secretly planning something, she feared Masagu was preparing to break up with her. Since this was his first time carefully planning an anniversary, Masagu naively forgot to reserve a restaurant early. He spent the whole day looking for a place with a night sky view, but failed. Work piled up, so he had to pick up the rings late. Luckily, the engraved couple rings were finished exactly as he wanted. But Yui, who was always sensitive, secretly followed Masagu to see what he was up to. Seeing him sneaking around, her anxiety only worsened. When she asked to see what he was holding, he awkwardly refused because he wanted to keep the surprise. Yui panicked even more, thinking he was hiding something terrible. In the end, seeing Yui trembling from worry, Masagu had no choice but to give her the gift immediately and explain everything. He realized that any surprise was meaningless if it made Yui feel insecure. When she opened the box and saw the engraved matching rings, Yui burst into tears of happiness. Even though Masagu told her she didn't need to wear it at work to avoid trouble, Yui promised she would wear it every day. Her joy was so overwhelming that all of her worries disappeared. They went home and continued celebrating their anniversary in their own way. Yui was surprised to learn that Masagu had even reserved a restaurant with a night view for the next day, though he ultimately failed due to inexperience. The next morning, Yui's phone reminded her of their half-year anniversary. She was surprised because she had never thought this day would feel so special. Work was still tough, and she was scolded by her boss as usual. But just looking at the ring washed all her stress away. Christmas Eve officially arrived. Snow covered the city. Sumi still visited the cafe but didn't see Shizuno. For working adults, Christmas was just another normal day. Everyone was rushing for the end-of-year workload. Both Masagu and Yui had to work overtime. During break time, Masagu went to the break room to eat some Christmas cake and ran into Yui. He wanted to sneak in a little workplace romance, but she was busy writing her review for the new product, so he quietly left. Even while busy, Yui kept glancing at the TV to get creative inspiration. For Masagu, a simple Christmas like this wasn't bad at all. Suddenly, he noticed the failed contest pastries Yui had brought back as keepsakes. To him, they looked like medals representing her effort. Yui was genuinely surprised by that point of view. The truth was Yui didn't like Christmas. Every time she looked at the pastries in stores, she remembered the people who pressured her and she felt like she could accomplish nothing. When dating Masagu, she always wondered why he never cared about anniversaries. But now she understood. To Masagu, every day with Yui was already special. Just as the atmosphere between them turned romantic, Yui's phone rang. Her supervisor informed her that her spring contest entry had passed the review, making the two of them laugh with joy. Since Masagu couldn't congratulate her directly, he pretended to congratulate the vending machine next to him. At the shopping mall, the number of customers was still huge as always. However, today was special. Yui had suddenly become a cheerful, energetic sales staff. The reason was that the new sales manager had assigned her to the sales counter for a few days to gain real-world experience. Recently, Yui hadn't seen Masagu much, so she planned to buy him some premium chocolates for Valentine's Day. But coincidentally, right during Valentine's season, the sudden surge of customers buying chocolate forced the department head to come down and help with sales. In reality, he could have asked a new employee to handle it, but he thought this was a good chance for Yui to learn. So he asked her instead. Yui agreed to work as a sales clerk for a few days. But in return, she wanted the department head to give her extra advice on her spring contest product. While Yui was overwhelmed with work, Masagu was also studying very hard. He had developed a habit of reviewing lessons every morning. Even though both were busy, their feelings for each other did not change at all. Today, Masagu went to their usual cafe earlier than usual to study. Unfortunately, the cafe was closed, forcing him to find a different place. Unexpectedly, he stumbled upon Shizuno and Sumi chatting extremely comfortably with each other. At first, Masagu thought it was just a coincidental meeting, but seeing Shizuno's unusually bright smile made it hard to believe it was just coincidence. When Shizuno noticed someone peeking, Masagu instantly hid behind a corner, which made him unable to study at all for the rest of the morning. His head was filled with questions about their relationship. They had always been close co-workers. But today, something felt different. During lunchtime, Masagu planned to make up for the lost study time but accidentally ran into Sumi. If he greeted him, Sumi would know Masagu saw the cafe scene that morning, so he kept quiet for safety. Sumi, however, was curious about the certification Masagu was studying for and even asked if Shizuno had studied that too since she was so skilled. Taking the chance, Masagu shared his first impression of her. When he first joined the company, she dried him alive. But thanks to that, he improved a lot. Only when Mori joined did Shizuno become slightly less strict. Hearing this, Sumi didn't look surprised at all. He even bragged that he had been talking to Shizuno a lot lately, making Masagu start to smell something. However, he told himself they were simply close co-workers with similar interests. Overthinking someone else's relationship would be rude. Finally, Masagu admitted that he saw them sitting together at the cafe that morning and that it was his first time seeing Shizuno smile so brightly, which made Some's cheeks turn slightly red. Meanwhile, Yui was starting to feel exhausted at the shopping mall. Mori had told her that her husband was also staying up day and night studying. It had been 2 weeks since they last saw each other, so Yui missed Masagu very much. She had planned to meet him on Valentine's Day, but that day was still far away. Both were too busy chasing their goals to find time to meet. Every time she saw couples holding hands while selling chocolates, Yui missed Masagu even more. That night, returning home drained, she tried to nap but couldn't because the image of holding hands kept replaying in her mind. Yui wanted to do that with Masagu but was afraid their relationship would be exposed. She called him to vent, but after a few words she unconsciously mentioned their intimate moments, nearly making Masagu choke, because what could he do through the phone? When she realized what she had said, Yui was so embarrassed she wanted to bury herself underground, so she pretended to be sleepy and hung up. The next morning, Yui was tasked with bringing documents to the accounting department. It had been a while since she visited, so she took the chance to check what Masagu was doing. Lately, they hadn't seen each other at work, so she felt a bit nervous. Combined with the embarrassing things she said last night, Yui felt extremely shy. When she met Masagu during work hours, he still acted like a normal coworker, which made her even more flustered, even though she was the one who set the rule to keep their relationship secret. Sometimes she wished their love wasn't restricted by workplace rules. While receiving the documents, her hand accidentally brushed against Masugu's hand. Yui jolted in surprise, her heart pounding, but luckily no one noticed. She wondered if she was really suited for dating someone in the same company. But as she stepped into the elevator, Masagu suddenly ran after her and used the chance to stay by her side for a few minutes. He even held her hand, completely catching Yui off guard. Masagu knew very well that lately Yui had been looking at him more than usual. And after last night's phone call, he understood just how much she missed him. His hand was drenched in sweat. Apparently he had sprinted with all his strength to catch the elevator. In that small enclosed space, the two got to be together for a moment, even if it was short. Finally, Valentine's Day arrived. Yui's spring Sakura cookie product was completed, but before she could meet her boyfriend, she still had to get through a sales shift at the mall. Yui told herself she had to stay focused to finish on time for her date with Masagu. However, the number of customers today was unusually overwhelming, to the point where manager Kiri had to come down to help. Every time she saw customers happily buying chocolate, Yui felt more motivated to work. After her shift, the manager even offered her some premium chocolate, but Yui refused because she was rushing to meet Masagu. She ran at full speed to the meeting spot, even though she didn't have time to fix her hair or put on makeup. Yui still felt incredibly excited. When she met Masagu, she felt guilty and a little shy for not being able to buy chocolate for him. But she brought a sakura pastry she made herself, which made Masagu extremely happy. Even without chocolate, having Yui was more than enough. Yui also felt completely happy. Office romance was tiring, but also wonderful. While they were talking, Masagu suddenly said he wanted to make their relationship public. Yui was so startled she didn't know how to respond, until Masagu laughed and said he was just joking. It seemed she still wasn't ready for going public. Back in high school, Masagu always scored high on mock exams but froze during the real ones. In university, he got an A on mock tests but suffered stomach pain from stress during the actual exam and failed. Even during his company interview, he shook like a leaf. Yet he somehow passed, something he still can't understand. Masagu thought he had overcome his fear of pressure, so he applied for the Level 1 accounting certification exam. But the result was a painful failure. Just remembering it was enough to keep him awake at night. At that moment, Yui, his girlfriend, sent him a message to cheer him up. She told him to just try his best, and that failing was fine. If he failed, she would book the hotel for their next trip. Masagu deeply admired her confidence and competence. Thanks to her promise, he gathered the courage to take the exam again. Even though they didn't know who would win the bet, Masagu still wanted to pay for the hotel himself. But he immediately backed out when he saw Yui had chosen a luxury room costing 120,000 yen. He called her at once and suggested that if he passed, they should split the hotel fee. Yui agreed, which still meant Masagu had to pay 60,000 yen. Because of that heavy fee, Masagu walked into the exam room with maximum determination. When the results came out, both he and Yui were overjoyed to learn he had passed the Level 1 accounting exam. That also meant their bet ended in a tie, so they had to choose a different hotel room for their trip. Masagu silently thanked Yui for always supporting him, even though Yui still hadn't realized she accidentally chose a room costing 120,000 yen. The next day, Masagu was invited out for drinks by two close friends to celebrate his exam success. During the party, Tamura suddenly announced that he would be getting married next month, leaving the whole group stunned. Meanwhile, the other friend had no good news to share, so he ended up treating everyone to beer. Just when things seemed fine, a few days later, Masagu was shocked to hear rumors that he was about to be transferred to the HR department. At first, he thought it was just nonsense, but the moment he ran into Shizuno, he started to worry for real. These kinds of rumors usually reach management before spreading to staff, and she clearly had heard something. Masagu panicked even more as everyone around him kept gossiping non-stop. He had thought it was just a rumor, but hearing that HR was short on staff made him believe he might actually be the one chosen. Worse, Mori asked him to check a money transfer request, making Masagu nearly jump thinking it was the transfer announcement. Yui also heard the rumor, but she believed it wasn't anything serious. Sumi was once transferred to the planning department after a single phone call. So Yui warned Masagu to be careful with any calls from the company. The next morning, the phone rang and made Masagu jump, but it was just Mori calling. Right after that, Shizuno announced a rearrangement of tasks and assigned Mori some of Masugu's original work. This convinced Masagu that he really was about to be transferred. He told Yui the news even though he hadn't received any official call from his superiors. The following morning, Masagu behaved like he was about to leave forever, confusing Mori completely. He also began handing off work to coworkers, since if the transfer happened, it would be sudden and the company always dumped work last minute. Although he felt sad, Masagu tried to comfort himself that a transfer might bring fresh opportunities. But thinking about having just passed his accounting exam only to leave the department made him feel regretful. Yet that same regret pushed him to work even harder than usual, surprising both Mori and Shizuno. Meanwhile, in the planning department, Mita was practicing his new camping hobby and invited the whole team to join his family trip. After work, Masagu went out to buy canned coffee and accidentally ran into Yui. He asked what the HR department looked like, but Yui only laughed, thinking he was overthinking. Masagu confessed that he never even wanted to be an accountant in the first place. Yet now he had even taken the Level 1 certification. Hearing that, Yui found him incredibly adorable. And that determination was exactly why she liked him so much. Taking the chance, Yui invited Masagu to join the camping trip with the planning team. If this really was the last time the accounting department would go out together, Masagu wanted to enjoy it fully. He only worried about people finding out he and Yui were dating. But Yui was calm. They had hidden it for a year already. Being found out now didn't really matter anymore. Though, if they went public, it would be embarrassingly awkward. Sometime later, the camping trip officially began. It was originally supposed to be a family outing, but Mita turned it into a massive picnic for both departments. Mita's wife, who used to be the star of the sales department and also knew Shizuno, joined as well. Somehow, this little group had become incredibly close, and Masagu had become part of it too. While everyone was bringing their luggage into the rooms, Masagu and Yui accidentally brushed hands and burst into giggles like newlyweds. In another corner, Shizuno felt a bit out of place because she was almost the oldest person there. Mori blended in well with the planning department, and Sumi remained as calm as always. Shizuno joked that she was getting old. She wondered if she could still keep up. Sumi told her she should relax more and talk to everyone. After the hot spring bath, the group held a barbecue party. Yui helped Shiori prepare her signature curry dish. Taking the chance, Yui asked Shiori about the time she dated Mita and whether she hid it from coworkers. Hearing that, Shiori instantly guessed that Yui was in love with someone in the company. She said that back then, she and her husband didn't hide anything at all, if they wanted to say it. They just said it. Right after that, Shiori asked Yui and Masagu to help organize a surprise birthday for Mita. Masagu and Yui were assigned to keep Mita outside while Shiori and the kids prepared the cake. A moment later, the whole family brought the cake out, making Mita so touched he was speechless. When night fell, Mita's family went to bed early. The warm atmosphere spread across the campsite. Seeing everyone so close to each other, Masagu felt this might be the perfect time to reveal his relationship with Yui. The group was chatting when Masagu and Yui's eyes accidentally met. Just a second was enough to understand each other's thoughts. In that moment, Masagu stood up, took a deep breath and said, "Everyone, I have something to announce." After the campsite became warm and peaceful at night, Masagu planned to use the opportunity to reveal his relationship with Yui to the group. He had just gathered his courage and stood up when Yukan suddenly spoke first, asking Sumi something, causing Masagu and Yui to freeze on the spot, forcing them to sit down like nothing happened. Everyone turned to tease Sumi. Sumi calmly said that in the past he would just read books and listen to music during his free time. But lately he had been going out with his girlfriend. The whole group immediately dropped their jaws in shock. Sumi was about to say more about his girlfriend, but after seeing Shizuno's subtle warning look, he quickly fell silent. Masagu only needed one glance at Shizuno's blushing face to realize that she was Somei's girlfriend. He and Yui realized they had missed their chance to confess, so they agreed, maybe another time. Still, gatherings like this were truly fun and memorable. The next morning, Masagu woke up early to exercise and unexpectedly ran into Yui, who was also taking a walk. They both laughed, feeling like they had some kind of telepathic connection. Last night, everyone had sat around the campfire, drinking beer and sharing heartfelt stories. Yui had planned to announce their relationship, and so did Masagu, but in the end, neither of them managed to say it. At that moment, Shizuno and Sumi showed up as well. Seeing the two standing side by side, Masagu was completely sure he had guessed the new couple correctly. Yui blushed because she had accidentally discovered her senior's secret. Shizuno was about to explain, but Masagu quickly reassured her, "It's okay. We're just like you too." And so, the four of them silently understood each other's secrets, though none of them had the courage to announce it to the whole group. When they returned to the company, Shizuno unexpectedly assigned Masagu a new task in the accounting department. It was then that he realized all the rumors about being transferred to HR were just him overthinking. All of his determination, imagination, and mental preparation for moving to a new environment vanished into thin air. Right at that moment, Yui received a call from the HR management office. Everyone thought the one being transferred would be Masagu, but it turned out the one being transferred was Yui. The manager announced that from now on Yui would be moved to the PR department. Even though she was doing extremely well in the planning department, he also praised Yui's abilities and said that in PR, she would have more opportunities to grow. After the call, Yui returned to her desk with mixed feelings. She knew this was probably the last period she would get to work with her beloved colleagues in the planning department. When Masagu heard the news, he immediately called Yui. He was shocked that the person being transferred wasn't him but her. He understood how hard Yui had worked in her current job, but what impressed him most was how calmly she accepted the new decision. While he panicked the moment he heard the rumor, Yui treated it like a natural turning point, as if she had just finished one chapter and was ready to move on to the next. Sometime later, Yui began handing over all of her tasks in the planning department. Kiribayashi even sent her an encouraging email, praising her for doing such a great job. That day, Yui went out to eat with her two close friends, Yukan and Yukiko. During the meal, she told them she was about to be transferred to the PR department. In fact, both of them had already suspected it, because lately Yui had often been called in for discussions with upper management. And PR was a place where she could fully showcase her strengths. After hearing it, Yukan suddenly burst into tears, remembering all the moments they had spent together in the planning department. Yui also couldn't hold back her tears and cried along. In that emotional atmosphere, Yui decided to reveal another secret. She confessed she was dating Masagu. Yukan was so shocked she froze with her mouth wide open, while Yukiko laughed because she had already guessed it long ago but pretended to be surprised to keep the mood fun. Yui didn't want to go public with the entire company, but with her two closest friends, she wanted them to know the truth. Yukiko shared that all this time, she had noticed how the two behaved around each other at work. Sometimes they secretly talked. Their eyes looked different from the usual, so she had suspected for a long time. Yui blushed bright red, but in her heart she felt relieved to finally share it with the people she trusted most. The conversation shifted to Tamura's wedding. That day, Yui and Masagu attended the ceremony together, but the main character was Masugu's friend's wedding. The two of them partied like crazy through 4 or 5 after parties before going home. On the way back, they happened to pass by the street where they had first confirmed their relationship. Old memories suddenly flooded back. Before becoming lovers, Yui and Masagu used to fight like cats and dogs at work. They were classmates who joined the company at the same time, so they always clashed over work-related matters. But after one drinking party together, they talked about pressure, about the fear of failure, and about the things they didn't dare tell anyone else. From that day on, the distance between them gradually closed. They started going out together more often, sending messages to each other every day. Yui's messages back then were so adorable that Masagu just wanted to take her home already. But he still hesitated because of the label, same batch colleagues in the company. At the company, Masagu often wanted to compliment Yui on how beautiful her hairstyle looked. But every time he opened his mouth, she would dismiss him or tease him back. On the contrary, when they hung out outside of work, Yui was incredibly cute, and she kept the exact hairstyle he had once accidentally complimented, which made him fall even more for her. One time it started raining very heavily. After the gathering, Masagu suggested that Yui stop by his place to wash up before going home. He didn't expect Yui to actually agree, which made him panic inside. After she finished showering, Masagu almost couldn't control himself at the sight in front of him. Thankfully, he still kept his rationality and didn't let anything cross the line. Their relationship remained at the stage of ambiguous but not official. After that, the company organized a drinking party for the same batch group. Masagu wanted to use the chance to take another step forward, but every time, Yui's sharp tongue shut him down. When Tamura bragged about his girlfriend, everyone started complaining that they were single and had no intention of dating anyone from the company. Hearing that made Masagu nervous. He didn't know how everyone would react if they found out he liked Yui. That day, Yui drank a bit too much and decided to walk one train station to sober up. When he found out she was going alone, Masagu immediately chased after her, only to be scolded for following her. Yui said he was too kind, and that it could easily make others misunderstand. At that moment, Masagu couldn't hold back anymore and said it directly. He liked her. And it was absolutely not a misunderstanding. Yui was surprised, reminding him that until now they had always been same batch colleagues. But she eventually admitted she had liked him for a long time too. She just didn't know how to say it. Yui still worried that dating within the company would attract gossip or affect their work. Masagu understood that, but he didn't want to stay in the position of close colleague forever. He just wanted Yui to be his girlfriend, even if they had to date in secret. In the end, Yui agreed. From that moment on, they officially began a secret office romance. Returning to the present, as they walked on the same street where they confessed years ago, Masagu thought to himself, if they just keep walking forward, maybe one day he and Yui would also stand at a wedding altar like Tamura. At that moment, memories of their secret dates, their stolen lunch breaks to meet each other, their sweet messages and the affection they shared all came rushing back. On Yui's first day working in the PR department, she coincidentally met Masagu in the elevator. New environment, new position, but the person she loved was still there. The world around them was changing, but Yui embraced those changes as part of her growth. Having a lover in the same company was both tiring and fun, but for them, it was something wonderful. And just like that, Season 1 of the anime, titled The Secret Office Romance, comes to a close, with a warm and hopeful ending for the next chapter. Today's video ends here. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to support Oni-chan in making more fun videos. Thank you everyone for watching until the end. Love you all forever.